Before getting started, I would like to acknowledge Bringing Theory to Practice's multi-institutional innovation grant, which has made this project possible by fostering sustainable collaboration between community organizations and higher education. In a few minutes, we are going to hand things over to our guest speakers, three remarkable individuals who have contributed greatly to the rich cultural tapestry of the Rochester community. First, however, it is my pleasure to introduce Roberta Schwartz, who will explain the International City of Asylum project and its relevance to Rochester. Please welcome Roberta Schwartz.
Thank you so much. And good evening and welcome to the Arts of Asylum series. We're so glad that you're joining us for our third and final program. And my name is Roberta Schwartz, and I'm dedicated to establishing a City of Asylum here in Rochester. For those of you who are not yet acquainted with the project, a City of Asylum provides sanctuary to endangered literary writers, musicians, and artists so they can continue to create and their voices are not silenced. This organization supplies free housing, travel expenses, healthcare, and a stipend. It also brings together and builds community by supporting new and challenging cultural experiences led by local, national, and international voices. That artistic vibrancy, that opportunity to share cultural experiences, and that emphasis upon protecting world-class artists in need is something worth bringing to Rochester. In support of that, my husband and I have purchased and furnished a house in the city of Rochester. We will make this house available rent-free to an exiled literary writer under threat of persecution. Mike Jacobs, Dean of Humanities and Social Sciences at MCC, and Lytton Smith, Director of the Center for Integrative Learning at SUNY Geneseo, have put together this series, which is supported with a grant from Bringing Theory to Practice. As a longtime grant writer, I intend to bring funding support to this endeavor, and that will take place just as soon as we receive our not-for-profit status. Eric S. Lehman, our moderator this evening, has served as an activist for the arts in Rochester since the inception of his 1975 gallery project in 2008. A longtime art collector, graphic designer, and creative, he channeled that love into a DIY curatorial mission to share his love of art and to be a champion for the arts in Rochester and beyond. He has also been co-creator and lead organizer of the Wall Therapy Mural Intervention Project alongside founder Dr. Ian Wilson, helping kickstart a resurgence and newfound appreciation for muralism in Rochester. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. We look forward to your engagement in bringing the City of Rochester, the City of Asylum to Rochester. Thanks again.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce our two artists that we're going to be speaking with tonight. Tonight will be a conversation, and we're going to try and we've got an outline. We're going to keep it relatively loose, though. We have a lot of images to share about what we're going to be talking about. And there's also the Q&A that as you have questions, please enter them. And as I can, I will bring them into the conversation. First off, we have Sarah C. Rutherford. Over the past decade, Sarah has developed her skills as a respected muralist, illustrator, educator, and community leader. Collaboration is a consistent thread that connects her work to many different venues, such as, but not limited to, co-founding the Yards Collaborative Art Space in 2011 as a community art space, co-creating Rock Paint Division in 2015 as a city-funded youth mural arts employment program, and most recently, the launch and implementation of her comprehensive public art project, Her Voice Carries. Welcome, Sarah. I would also like to welcome Shawn Dunwoody. Shawn is a multidisciplinary creative force for change. His experience as a director, producer, designer, maker, influencer, developer, and every once in a while an artist have given him the opportunity to practice in creative implementation and innovative planning, focusing on urban interventions and community forms of urban development. He believes bringing people from different backgrounds together can start the most progressive movements for change together. Shawn also works to bring collaboration, innovation, and social change to the downtown area with projects that include Parking Lots of Love, Play Walk Downtown, Music on Main, Hinged Neighbors, Scenes on Scio, Downtown Super City, and Downtown Definitely. He is also an advisory board member for the New York State funded Rock the Riverway Genesee Riverfront Revitalization Plan and a culture and community developer for the reimagined aqueduct. Are we not? We're not? You should have crossed it out, buddy.
No, I would just say cut it off. I didn't know the thing was that long. I'm sorry.
It's all right. It's good. Both of you do so much. And I think that's why you were asked to be part of this project. For those of you who haven't watched the previous two Art of Asylum talks, I highly recommend checking them out. They center on artists who are based in the home of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And they focus, but today what we're going to focus on are artists actually working in our own backyard. So, without getting too much into City of Asylum, Pittsburgh, the one thing that is notable about there is that they have these houses that are painted up effectively almost as their base stations for their project. I couldn't help but make a tie-in between both Shawn and Sarah, both having their studios here in town. The city is their canvas and beyond. So I want to start, kind of a little bit at the beginning. Right now you're both known for your public works, but how did we get there? How did you go? Like when I met both of you, you're more known for your studio practice, and then over the last decade plus, that has definitely evolved into the public sphere, and we are talking about creative placemaking today. So who would like to go first? Talk about kind of. I guess we're deferring to Sarah. Sorry, he pointed to you.
All right. Yeah. So I guess I moved to Rochester in 2007 from Boston originally, and it was pretty soon after graduating from school. I thought I would be here for a few months, and I'm here. I keep saying 10 years later, but now I think we're going on like 15. I think we're going on 15 years. So yes, I kind of adopted Rochester as my hometown. And I really do feel that way. When I moved here in 2007, I met an amazing network of people. Eric was one of them. And it really, and Shawn, actually, we both met at a pretty early time of my arrival to Rochester. So, it was really through meeting this network of artists that made me want to stay. And yeah, as Eric said, I started by making paintings on wood, these giant paintings that no one could fit in their homes and just were super impractical. And I would spend all this time, I'd have these gallery shows and people would come look at it and they'd leave. And, I don't know, it just didn't really, it didn't fulfill me. I felt really depressed after every time. And yeah, I just realized it wasn't enough. I wanted collaboration. I wanted to create something that was bigger than myself. And I wanted the artwork to live in the world. So that was really the seeds of, I think, what started this journey for me. And it took a while to get there, but it was actually through wall therapy, coming to Rochester and really seeing artists travel from, across the globe to paint in Rochester, specifically one artist, Faith 47. Watching her paint was really a turning point for me, just realizing that was a thing that you could do. You could travel and you can make these works, and you could occupy public space in this way. And yeah, I fell in love. So I got to paint with wall therapy in 2013, and that was my first exterior mural. First time on a boom lift, first time with spray paint, really rocking it on a wall. And yeah, I fell in love. So that was 2013. Been doing it ever since. And I think first I had to figure out how to paint on walls, and then I needed to figure out what I wanted to say. And it was really through the project Her Voice Carries that all of those parts came together, as well as my commitment to mentoring the next generation of artists. as well as what Eric said, the Rock Paint Division, the youth mural program that I run. So I don't know, that's kind of the quick synopsis of what led me to today.
Shawn, how about you?
Oh, let's see. What got me here? Yeah, like you said earlier, you do the gallery scene, whatever. So I'll backtrack. I'll go back. Broke dude. Kids. You're trying to survive, trying to live. You end up in the gallery scene. I thought it was cool. You're going around. You're showing it, like Sarah said. You're showing work in these galleries. Like, oh yeah, this is great. You're sipping your wine. You think you're all special and cool. And then you're like, yeah, it's like this stuff is here, and you're like lugging it back home and everything. But I was on that sort of circuit and going to colleges and universities and speaking about my work. My work was actually a lot of assemblages, so I was picking up things off the floor and reassembling them and telling the story, trying to relate my story of African Americans here in America and what's going on. And I was addressing one audience. I was addressing an audience in particular that I felt when I looked at the sea of folks, they didn't look like anyone in my neighborhood or in my vicinity where I'm talking about. And I felt as if they really don't give a damn. So I said, to hell with this. And I stopped doing anything that had to do with a gallery or staying within four walls, even though I did start a gallery called Four Walls. But I realized if I wanted to, I needed to be who I wanted to see when I was 15 years of age, when I was out there trying to run my micro pharmaceutical business. I hope folks know what I'm saying when you do that. I wanted to be that. I wanted to be what I didn't see. I didn't see any black men out there painting or creating artwork. You hear about, museums and stuff, but I was like, all right, well, how is this even possible? So I went on the path to say, to show people it is possible. It is possible to be that person. And sort of my first sort of go at it was with painting corner stores. I said, if I can't affect my neighborhood, then what can I do? So actually the predecessor to Rock Paint was Mark. And so worked with young people to actually address the stores, because we see in the store windows are advertising, hot food, hot wings, cold subs, cold beer, cigarettes, CBT, all these things. Nothing wrong with all those things. I like to smoke, drink, have a good time, all those things. But I realized it's actually an influence. It's actually bombarding the minds of our people as they continue in the neighborhood. So I said, all right, let's send some positive messages in these same areas where in most cases people are waiting for a bus 15, 20 minutes. Why can't we influence or guide people with messages that come from the community that express them and are connected to them? So that's really where I've drawn on that. So in most of the work I do, I try to make sure that there is a community component there. I don't necessarily have to make every line straight and every color has to be perfect, but I need people to be engaged in it and feel the sense of ownership and connectivity. And so that's what got me here to this point. I hope I answered your question.
Absolutely. And I screwed up. I was trying to pop up some examples of some of that early work. And hopefully we can see this. Whoops. Here are some of the mark signs. And honestly, the Post-it notes were still some of my favorite ones that you did. And I'm wondering, kind of as a transition, I'm going to start with you, Shawn, because I think you definitely had some of the earlier public works that were starting to bring in people. Here is kind of not necessarily chronologically grouped perfectly, but some works where a lot of you see. And I want to get on the right screen, try and find Fruit Belt Project.
Okay.
Which is, I think that's really, aside from Four Walls, that was where I think you were really on my radar as what you were doing out in the street. So I'm hoping you could talk a little bit about that, unless there's something that was earlier that I'm forgetting. I might be able to pop something up.
Look, I've been around a long time, Eric. So
you've done some stuff. You've done a few things.
I've done a few things. Well, I'll explain to you Fruit Belt Project and what I'm gonna try and condense this because we don't have much time. All right. So Fruit Belt Project. Every year I try to go to Philly and take a look at the murals that they have there. They boast, the most murals in the country. And so one day I was there. I was in Germantown, and I saw this project called Philly Painting that was done by Haas and Hans two Dutch artists, and their basic premise was they lived in the neighborhood. They lived there for 2 years, hired people from the neighborhood, and painted these facades across the buildings. So after viewing that, I said, hey, I can do that. Can I do that? I don't know. So I started, and I said, where could this actually happen? So I did it at the corner of Jay and Grape, which yes, Jay and Grape, which in 2012 and 2013, that area was one of the 7th most dangerous neighborhoods in America. And so I said, if we could do something, there's got to be something that can happen. So I took to the streets and started talking to neighbors about, what would you like this thing to look like? Can we pull in bringing in the fruit belt, explaining that their fruit names, it's lime, grape, orange, maple, oak, so people can understand where we're coming from that. And so we created this sort of fruitful, life-savory color scheme on the building so it could be identified. First day out, first idea, I had no paint. Luckily, I came across Sherwin-Williams. They were willing to donate this paint and workers. I had no people. I was lucky enough to get a news media, various other things. And that day, we had close to 300 people coming in and out, actually painting these walls and cleaning up the neighborhood. See, I can tell you so many side stories on that. And so from that, we felt, okay, well, so we've done this. What else can art do? What contact points can art have? So we painted College Club soda, which does the fizz soda, which some of you see in stores, and we painted the store across the street. So talking to Lou, I got to put on his voice. He's like, hey, what are you doing there, Shawn? You want to do something? So I said, all right, let's produce a seltzer. So what we did was we produced a fruit belt seltzer because they make seltzer there. And so what part of the proceeds and sales went to School 17, which is 3 streets down, to actually help part of their eco club that they had. Talking to Lou, he's like, hey, what else you got going on there? We created, we put fruit trees back in the neighborhood. So we put some pear trees, some apple trees, and some peach trees in the neighborhood. So if people are saying they're hungry and they can't eat, let's supply them with food. So from this, we worked with the kind folks over at RIT, and they did these print posters that we distributed. We did seed packets that people could actually plant their own food. And from there, we took the Fruit Belt Project to Brazil, where we ended up working on a project with a friend of mine, Eder Muniz. Eder.
I've got stuff for that later.
Oh, okay.
We'll be touching on that, taking on the road.
Okay, well, I'll stop talking. Go ahead, Sarah.
No.
Take the mic.
No, I just wanted, just so you know, we're getting there.
Okay.
Sarah, I mean, aside from the yards, I'm gonna stop my share for a second. Perhaps, I think the first pre-wall therapy you had, when we're talking about collaboration and creative placemaking, what you and Leah did with the yards, I think really changed, I think, how folks viewed how they could be interacting with art. It wasn't like what Shawn and I were doing with galleries. It was something very different. So I'm hoping you talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, kind of riffing off what I said earlier in terms of gallery spaces and like hanging paintings on walls. I knew that I was also interested in creating experiences and bringing people together through art in a way that was accessible. I loved that we were able to have this space at the public market where everyone comes. It's a meeting ground, and the yard's kind of a reference to the train yard where all these different people come together. And yeah, we wanted to make a space that was constantly changing. It was all about young artists coming together, collaborating across mediums, and building experiences. So every time we were in there, the space looked different. And it was kind of this constant shifting of people being able to just try things out and experiment. And, I loved it. I'm so proud of that space. It's still running under the guidance of
10 years.
10 years.
You built an amazing space, and it continues to grow without us. It's like a child truly growing up and watching it become its own person.
Totally, yeah. And now Christina Kaiser, who was our intern at the time, is running it. And so I love that it still exists and still going. And it was really after doing that for about 4 to 5 years, I realized that I wanted to break outside of the 4 walls, right? That I had that same kind of feeling. You can create all these experiences, you can try and make it as accessible as possible, but people still have to walk through a door to get there. And so I think after getting a taste of public art and painting in public space, I just realized how much that was what drove me. I loved being able to paint these images women, 4 or 5 stories tall, just huge and powerful. And it belongs to everyone. It's not belonging to any one person. And yeah, it was really through the public art that I kind of knew that I found my direction. So so her voice, go ahead.
Well, I want to use that as a segue into Her Voice Carries. And I think to make it a little easier to navigate, I'm going to leave it at this kind of, navigational view so we can really jump and respond. But these first couple slides, I don't know if there's anyone you want to talk about specifically, or I can just kind of slowly scroll through them while we discuss.
Yeah, I'll talk about the project as a whole, just to not, again, I could dive into each one, but I think just this idea of Her Voice Cares was born out of this, was born from this desire to shift the representation of women in public space in our community. And I also was thinking about how siloed and segregated our city was, and trying to think about creating links between some of these important organizations, between these areas of town. I chose one wall per area of town, or per quadrant plus center city. And I tried to paint each woman in a different area than where she was from. Again, just trying to think about hopefully people that might know Kaylin, for example, would go and travel the city to find her wall, and then go and travel all of the walls. So it was really all about thinking about these individual stories, but how they build connection across our city. And this could segue, but also then thinking about how to build it on a national scale, and think about connections across city and state lines, not just across the city itself.
I want to say, I definitely want to get into that. Before we jump back to Shawn, I want to, I think, very quickly segue into Rock Paint Division. Again, and because I think this also jump into then a segue back to Shawn with Empire Strikes Black, and working with youth, working with community members. So, if you could maybe speak a little bit about Rock Paint.
Yeah, so Rock Paint we founded in 2015, and I run it alongside Justin Suarez and Brittany Williams, who are the fellow public art coordinators. And it's a youth employment program. I think it's really important that the youth are paid for the labor that they're doing. And we create different murals in our centers around the city. So we're going into our 7th season. And what has been really powerful is to watch some of our alumni really kind of going off and doing their own work in the world. And I think it's some of the most important work I've engaged in. And what's been really interesting is to think about some of these skills that I've learned here in Rochester and how to translate them even in different communities.
And Shawn, before I kind of jumped the gun a little bit to talking about, Empire, but talking again about collaboration, continuing this theme, because it is, part and parcel to both of what you do. And I lost my note about the official title of this project. With the keyboard, the keyboards on Main Street. But
I don't even know if it has a name.
It does.
No, it's called Composer's Crossing. It's called, I did. It's called Composer's Crossing.
That's what it was.
I came up with the name. I couldn't even remember it.
It's all right. I'm often find myself in the exact same boat. We're like, wait, I have no clue what I just called that thing. But could you please talk about it? It was a very cool project that got national attention as well.
Yeah. I was working with a partner of mine, Richard Glazer, on this. We're like, hey, let's put some piano keys in front of, Eastman, which we thought was a great idea. Met with the city. They're like, hey, that's a great idea. State said, okay, yeah, you can do this. Everything's okay.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, but we needed the okay to literally close off the street to paint this from each corner person who owns a piece of land there. One owner didn't mind. The other 3 corners are owned by one institution. Oh boy, did they not want us to do this. They were worried about the maintenance. They were worried about what's going on. What are you going to do? I'm like, you don't even own the street. I mean, what are you worried about? Okay. So there was a point where this project was going to get pulled. We were going to stop it. But one of our initial persons who was supporting this project was also a major supporter to this institution. And so they said, hey, what's the holdup? If you do this, I'm going to pull some stuff from here because this sounds like a great project. And they're like, oh, yeah, go ahead. So we put the call out. We said, hey, we're just going to have people come and paint the street. I made a template. When I got there, one of the things I was talking about this before, somebody reminded me of this, that I was like, hey, does anyone know what a piano keyboard looks like? I have no clue. How many keys are on there? I don't know. So, but I have this sort of thing where I have each one teach one. So I teach one group, this is what you do. You're going to paint this black, this purple, you're going to spray paint this line. And if anyone else walks up, you tell them what to do. And so that's literally what's happening. I call it organized confusion. So as you see in that shot that you got there, me on top of the ladder.
It's very much a conductor of chaos at that point.
Which all of this was shot by the phenomenal Quajay, which
Yes.
he just happened to show up that day.
Yeah.
I never asked him to come, and he's the only person that documented this. So all said and done, he goes on top of the Y and takes that shot right there that you see, the aerial view.
Yeah.
And the first time people saw it, they didn't want to walk on it. They were afraid to walk on it. And we had to tell them, walk on it. But it was a great collaborative project because bringing people together who don't know each other and giving them these tools to actually empower and educate each other. They have to have a conversation. They have to talk about family. They have to talk about Rochester. They have to talk about various things. So we got complete strangers together. And that's when the Chicago, I forgot which, Washington Post picked it up. Picked it up, and that actually boosted that location and also helped people acknowledge that there was an international jazz festival here. So that, as far as place making, this was actually place activation. The place is already here, so we activated it differently and became a destination. They said, hey, I'm going to check out this musician, and then I got to go take a picture on the piano keys. So it became a whole other thing. Hope I got that in time.
Like, Shawn, breathe, my friend.
I just need to echo also, like, a few different walls I've done. There would be no documentation without Quajay. So just another shout out.
we absolutely love
his
Quajay.
showing up.
I was pinging him last night, like, hey, can I use the photos? You know, and you know, I think also a thread in what both of your work is you know, at times it's very inviting. It's very easily approachable, but there's also a measure of medicine in the applesauce. You know, in that you especially in the last few years, both of your work has taken on, you know, social issues that are very live and active. And I want to jump, speaking of Quajay, into one of you know, these iconic photos from the summer of 2020 of Shawn painting the Enough wall. And then I pardon my poor juxtaposition, but I took some of the photos that Shawn shared with me to show, you know, a different type of collaboration. And so, Shawn, I was hoping you could speak about this wall.
Oh yeah, definitely can. I like that phrase I never heard that phrase before, medicine in the applesauce. I'm stealing that one. That's beautiful.
Yeah. My life is all about, you know, the medicine in the applesauce.
I love that. Oh man, we all grew up doing that. So, okay. Yeah, so you know, everything's going on. There's so much unrest. There's COVID. We're confined. There's so much racial unrest and divide that's going on. And so I'm getting calls from people from media outlets and various other places. They're asking me, you know, hey, do you have something you want to say about what's going on? I'm like, no, I don't want to say anything. Leave me alone until I know what can be done. I don't want to just use idle words that just become a soundbite. I wanted to do something. And so scrolling through Twitter, I saw Quajay. He posted the words enough. I said, that's it. That's what I'm going to do. I'm not just going to paint something, but I want people to be able to connect because we've been so distant and we're feeling so torn apart. So I took this, painted enough on there, painted every shade of brown in there because that is which all of us stem from brown. And I put out some chalk and I told folks, what have you had enough of? Have you had enough unrest? Have you had enough of the racial divide? Have you had enough of racism? Or is there enough money and food to feed people? And why do we have so many issues and problems? And so the minute I put it out there, within a few hours, the wall was covered with what people wanted to say and how they wanted to be engaged. And I felt this is a way that we're actually having contact and communication with others that we right now we're being barred from even talking to one another. So it was a great way for this to happen. And somehow miraculously, when it rains, all that stuff washed away, but somehow it came back. And I only put chalk out there once. And somehow there was always chalk there for people to write on the wall. So it was a larger communal thing where people can actually engage.
Which again is a great segue. I'm going to kind of, you did a giant Black Lives Matter mural on Court Street, but I think the other part of that interesting project is what you did inside Manhattan Square Park, which kind of, I believe, came after enough, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you know, basically transforming Manhattan Square Park, which has always traditionally been a gathering place. You know, it's performance, it's parties, etc. And you turned it into a gigantic sounding board that could not be ignored in the summer of 2020. So if you could just kind of speak about that.
Yes. I'll talk about that. And it shares, and the space is some great artwork in there. By
right. Yeah. On the side.
Written as well. Yeah. And we made sure to cover that. I had a whole team that had to put a whole piece of plastic over it so no one would put any paint on it. I was like, God, this is a huge piece. This is the biggest piece of plastic I've ever seen in my life. So yes, I did paint the Black Lives Matter on the street. And the city gave me a call once they saw it in DC. I said, yeah, this could happen. I won't even go into all the politics and dynamics that happen there. But part of that was, I said, I will paint that on the street, but I need to do something. I want to paint MLK Park black because it is an amphitheater. Like you said, it's an amphitheater, and I want to be able to amplify voices. After doing enough, this did follow enough. And I saw that people needed an outlet. They needed a connection. So people are always gathering at this spot to protest or to gather. And that's always an artistic movement. There's song, there's dancing, there's signs, all these things are happening. But once the people leave, that energy is gone. And so I felt, let's help to amplify voices so that people can leave their messages about what they feel and what's going on. So all these things, it just happened like that. And I put chalk out once again, and it began to take its own life. And so, and this was actually reactivating that space.
Very much.
So just a couple of anecdotal stories, and then I'll stop talking. One is a teacher actually wrote down a summer reading list on the wall. A couple of students from that teacher saw it, wrote their names next to it. The library saw the post of this reading books, and they bought the books and they put them in the free library that I did up on top, which is the little red box you can see up there, in there for people to take to understand the climate of what's going on right now in the country. So it's these sort of things. So it became an activation space where people were doing, they were bringing music down. There were concerts down there. The basketball bus came. Yes, I brought a piano down there. Yeah, because I felt we were missing music. So I brought a piano for people to play. But it was that moment so people could be engaged. Somebody told me they were writing Black Lives Matter and someone was writing All Lives Matter. He said, we had a discussion, we agreed to disagree, but it was great to have that interaction. So that's what this was about. It was one of the largest installations in town. You know, some people may not think it was art. Some people might think it's just a chalk mess, but it's an art installation for people to actually expunge or gain from it. And I saw many of school groups taking trips, and people were, it was literally a destination. Yep. Sorry.
Absolutely. So, you know, in that, you know, like I said, one of the things that, again, both of you are doing are amplifying community voices. I mean, that, like part and parcel, like, you know, if anyone were, you know, hard pressed to name people who are doing that, it's like you two are the first top of the list for Rochester. But over the last couple of years, you've been doing more and more of taking your process and taking your message on the road to both amplify, you know, what's concerned to you, but also what is going on in these different communities. So we're going to do a little bit of a time travel back just a couple of years to Sarah, you know, to a project when Sarah took her Voice Carries, on the road. And this was a mural in Haverhill, Massachusetts. Sarah, can you talk about that process of, you know, you, and I think both of you, this will be a question that I want both of you to address, you know, in turn, is, you know, here, you know, you are part and parcel, you are Rochester, right? You have teams of people that come out and support you. There is a great vulnerability in trying to repeat that approach, repeat that message, repeat that process in somewhere where you may not have that support network. So I'm going to start first with Sarah on this, if I could.
Yeah, so I did want to think about how to travel with Her Voice Carries, and this particular wall was the first one I did. I brought a woman from Rochester, Shalinda Bowler from Teen Empowerment, and painted her in Haverhill, Massachusetts. And a lot of that, the only reason why this happened was because of the community contacts that I had in Haverhill, worked with a local organization and gallery called the Switchboard, as well as a lot of other community members within Haverhill. And I think that's the key, is finding these stakeholders in the communities to which you're traveling to build collaboration and partnerships is really the only way that this works. And that in that way, I'll say I've done a lot less of these murals than I wish I could be doing across the country. But I think a lot of that is because so much time and energy has to go into forming the right relationships to do it in the way that I feel, it's done well. And even with those partnerships, there's a lot of space that needs to be navigated. But when I was in Haverhill, I met with a lot of different women in Haverhill, recorded their stories. And then I ended up painting a woman from Haverhill in Battle Creek, Michigan, which is the next slide that you see. So it's this idea of, again, sharing these highly specific stories, but not just within our own communities. I think especially for women, we are maybe given accolades locally, but definitely not beyond that as often. So I think there's something also about sharing the work of women on a national scale and giving them accolades in that way. And yeah, so if you go to the next slide, that was in Indiana, Pennsylvania. And it was in partnership with Spruce Arts Residency, as well as Dripped on the Road, which is a traveling mural program. So I did that in 2020. And then if you go to the next slide, that was, I then came this past year, just about a month ago, and did a youth mural project in the same community. And that was really powerful to have brought my project. People saw me with this work. And then I came again to the same community and worked with a group of high school kids, mainly freshmen in high school, on building a program of a youth mural program. And what was so cool was that I gained these skills on how to create this program here in Rochester, and I was really sharing that with them in Indiana, Pennsylvania. So I worked with a local teacher who's down on the bottom ground with me, Jess Green, and really worked with her, not just on how to make this one mural, but how to turn this into a program that could be repeated. So really thinking about the sustainability behind it. And it was just an incredible experience to work with these kids for a week and get to hear all about their lives and what life was like in Indiana, Pennsylvania, and just all of them being so excited to the previous year have all these murals show up, and then this year they're crafting their own mural. So it was a really powerful experience to go back and help to kind of set the stage, hopefully for future projects to come.
Awesome. And before I pop over to Shawn, I do want to remind everyone, if you have questions, please use the Q&A panel. I am watching that while everyone are sharing their awesome experiences. So I'm going to jump to Shawn very quickly. Also, we're going to do a little time travel. I promised you Brazil. I want to go back and talk about that, because again, that was another very early, in our long history together. Big thing. I mean, there's a documentary talking about this process, confronting the wall. And I don't want to be remiss. The same filmmakers also did Her Voice Carries, the documentary.
Yes.
With Sarah. We've got famous folks here with us today. That's really, I think they both tell really awesome, compelling stories about your projects. And I think for both of you, it is not enough just to put paint onto something. It is about those connections that you're making and the message you're sharing. So Shawn, kind of like, how did you end up in Brazil? How and what are the logistics, like short form, but, due to time, but like, it's one thing to go across the country, but jumping, cross continent has its own challenge.
It does. It does. And where did you get these pictures from?
I'm Eric Lehman. I'm good.
I know. That's right. I got to talk to you about that. You are good, brother. So this was part of the extension of a fruit belt project. We're saying if we could do something here in Rochester, let's do something in Salvador, Brazil. And so with friend, and we all know Eder Munez, we're like, all right, we're coming to your town. So setting that up and bringing youth. So I brought 2 youth, which you can see, Ephraim down there. I call him my son, which we've got it. He worked for me for years. He worked with Sarah, and then he came back into town and did the John Lewis piece. So it's this big ripple effect of what you do when you actually engage and entrust people there. So we end up in Brazil. We basically did a mini mural festival. So there were 9 other artists there as well. So we got a chance to meet folks, really think about what this is. The mural we did, Que Beleza. I hope I'm pronouncing that correct. Anyone out there who speaks Portuguese will correct me. And saying how beautiful this is. And it was very beautiful because people in the neighborhood were stopping to talk and hang out, and I couldn't speak Portuguese at all. But it was great to do that. And and once again, community moment. I'll never forget little Benjamin. Young Benjamin wanted to paint. His dad spoke a little bit of English. I said, sure, Benjamin, let's do it. So I said, here's a demo, wipe the brush off, make it happen. And it was just an amazing moment to have someone beautifying their community and felt it was important to be a part of that process, that it's not, hey, I'm watching these guys do it. I want to be a part of it and I want to do this. That was his dad said he wants to be an artist. So it was great to have that connection point to do this. So it was fun, and trying to get permissions and passports and everything for high schoolers was a whole other ball game. Luckily, I didn't have to deal with that. Luckily, that was Chris and her team, and Sarah, that Chris will take care of things and get things done. So that was a fantastic experience to be able to take youth. And, when you talk about this engagement point and how you're actually helping, and Sarah talked about it earlier, just how you're actually influencing other people and other lives, going back to Ephraim, that was actually his first time ever on a plane and actually leaving this area. So it's like, all right, and which gives you a greater exposure. And I believe in exposure. And if we can expose people to different art forms and different people, we'll be surprised at the outcomes we get.
Absolutely. So I also want to poke another one. I wasn't sure where this one was.
Okay.
I saw Lincoln, but I did not know where it was. But I loved. It's another one where it's gone beyond just like the start of the fruit belt, where it's diamonds, right? Where our keyboard's very simple. You were having folks work on some much more detailed work in here as far as your collaborative process. So I was hoping you could kind of share a little bit about this one as well.
Yeah, sure can. It's this one is in Lincoln, Nebraska. So I went out to Lincoln, Nebraska.
Okay.
The year prior, I did a virtual residency. I was supposed to be there, but this was actually, because corrugated is the worst thing to paint on. I'm like, why did they give me that? And I'm working with a brush.
It's very
neat.
neat.
Especially with brushes.
So I said, I need people here. But it was fun, and people showed up. It was 90 some odd degrees, and people were there to be engaged and really make this happen. And once again, you give people the reins and they will take it on. So if someone says, when I'm working in community projects and someone's working on a particular area, and they'll say, you know what? You told me to paint this area green, but I think it should be purple. You know what I do? I say, paint it purple, because you've been working on this. This has just been an idea. Now it's on the wall. You're actually engaged with it more than I actually am. And if you see purple working in this scheme, you make it happen. And in this particular mural, this I had no design. This came from each element that you see on that side wall, the leaves, which are actually, because Eder was there with me as well. He was there with me as well, painting 2 buildings further down. 2 streets further down. So that represents his mural. There was a wheat paste with a young lady with her fist up. So all these elements, I had no design until I saw what everyone else was doing. And they actually was like, oh, that's kind of cool. You put every element in there. And so now actually the people can connect and find those connection points in the murals that are spread down the street, and they help paint them, was the point of bringing that connection. So they're really connected in every way.
Awesome. I'm gonna pop out for a second. We do have a couple questions. If I can, I'm a very weird stacked monitor scenario going on here. I'm just
You
gonna
never
read
did
it.
send us those pictures. We got to see the pictures of the layout. but
I owe you the pictures. So I'm gonna. There are two questions came in. I'm gonna ask one. I think it's a little more on this topic, and then one's a little bit broader. Michael asks, it is clear that the messages and ideas of your public art projects are meant to uplift the communities in which they're installed. That said, creative placemaking is transformative, and people are often averse to change. Have you ever come up against resistance or received criticism aimed at your art? I say that laughing.
Never.
Very knowing laugh. I think we've all experienced that in our projects. You know, without getting too much into the horror stories, you know, I guess, you know, we acknowledge, yes, that's absolutely. I guess a question off of that is how do you deal with it? How do you navigate it? You know, I know, like, as a mix, there's, you know, the idea of like, all right, we're going to interact with the artists who are helping, or the community members working on the project, but you know, outside of us, there are always naysayers who don't like the change, no matter what it is. So whoever would like to jump in on that first.
Yeah, Shawn, I mean, I actually really love that Shawn's been talking about this idea of activating spaces, because I do really relate to that versus this idea of making a space, it's activating it and showing its potential. And I think, like, the other beautiful thing about murals is that murals aren't going to last forever. I think there is an activation that can happen. It's so much about like the act of doing it and bringing people together and creating this experience, as much as it is about any one piece of art that's left. And I don't know, I think that change is hard, and I think sometimes people are butt up against that, and maybe they don't love it. You know, it's like with wall therapy. Think about how many murals are in our city, and not everyone's going to love every mural. Not everyone's going to love my murals. Like,
no, they don't.
That's just the reality, you know. And but I think that what it can spark is much greater than the walls themselves. And I think that that's the piece that I try and focus on. I was just talking to Eric about this the other day, even thinking about coming on this panel. I think sometimes it's hard to grow publicly. Like, been making murals since 2013 and seeing some of my earlier works and earlier ideas even, you know, I think it's hard to grow publicly and make mistakes or know that some people may not love what you've done when you put all of your heart and soul and intention into it. But, you know, impact is different than intention. So it's like also trying to attend to the impact of your work. And I think, if anything, mural work is more of an education in people and like how to navigate. And so, yeah, I don't know if that answers it. Sorry.
No, it's absolutely. Shawn, would you like to add anything?
Okay, yeah. Folks out there listening, also, I want you to know that Eric himself is also a fantastic artist and painter and muralist as well. And I'm thinking, okay,
no,
it's like,
this is on you guys today. But thank you so much, Shawn. I appreciate
because
that.
I don't think people understand that. Yeah, you know, when you're organizing and putting together things for like wall therapy and stuff, you actually understand what it's like to be on a wall and do it. You know what I mean? Okay. Got to give props for props to do. I think it's no one's. I tell you, every time I approach a project, there's maybe one person who likes it, and I got a billion other people say it's a terrible idea. No, don't do it. It's the worst. And how do I deal with that? I try to listen. I try to listen, and I try to get people to feel comfortable. It is. People don't like change. People don't like it at all. Two quick anecdotal stories. I'm doing one in Mount Morris. Folks said, "We don't want it. It'll be a distraction. It'll be disgusting. We don't want it." They're literally saying that. They're walking up. "We don't want this here." It's paint. I talk to them, process, whatever. They see it. It's all done and painted, right? They're like, "Oh my goodness, this is great. This is fantastic. Now let's cut down that tree that's in front of it because we can't see it." I'm like, what is going on? So it's just it's something, as Sarah said, it's that educational point where people get educated. One I did on Lewis Street, working with the community, having them paint it. A neighbor who lived right across the street said, this is going to be terrible. It's the worst thing ever. I had a day where all of the neighborhood people who were part of that signed the wall. At the close of all that, people came from out of town, signed this wall.
Yeah.
The woman said, this is beautiful. I'm sorry. Thank you. So sometimes it's that educational moment where, like Sarah said, sometimes people just don't get it. And some people still aren't going to like it, you know.
No, and absolutely. And if I can add, again, I'm oftentimes the person having those conversations, if like running interference for the folks on the wall. And I've come to relish those conversations because it's about education, information, learning, sharing. But, and I totally forgot what I was going to say. Some building a little bit off one thing that Sarah said, it's when you guys were doing studio practice, their interaction is they go into a white box and they see a finished piece. They don't see the process. They don't know the iterations, the mistakes, the redos, the ugly steps on the way. When we're doing this mural work in the streets, that whole process is laid bare. And yeah, I have lost count of the times where I hear the building owner being like, this looks horrible. I hate this. What are you doing to my building? Then by the end, when and this is, as we're working with the visiting artists, etc., by the end, they're like, oh my God, I can't live without this. And so there is this measure of patience and hand holding and trying to get people through that process. I mean, I too have horror stories from 2012 when we started doing, 3-story murals in a city that did not have them. It was ugly and there was animosity, scary animosity. But now I think through the work that we're doing, that you're all doing, like we're all doing together, there's a greater understanding of that process, at least in Rochester. The folks who've been paying attention, they too now, come to relish the time spent with all of us as we're working on these projects together, and have a greater understanding of the process and not just that final product, which again attests to the work that you've all done, working with folks in the street. That is no crueler studio than a street corner, because you will hear every thought and opinion, no matter what, solicitor otherwise. I know we're getting close to 6. There was one little question that came up that's a little more broad spot, but it's, and I'm going to add my own little intro. I mean, at this point in your careers, you are the inspirations, like especially in Rochester. Like there are so many people who have learned so much from you, have been inspired by the work you do. Can you share a few folks? I know Sarah shared Faith, and I know Swoon was another big one that I'm sure she'll talk about. But were there folks, artists that inspired you on along the way, both, I guess, starting out, but as you've grown, and as you've come into your own right over the last few years? And I'll pop to Sarah, since I already name dropped 2.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also think like artists local to Rochester, I'm really, for the size of our city, I think we have an incredibly strong art community here. And I have been deeply impacted by the artists in Rochester. So, working alongside Brittany and Justin with Rock Paint Division, even having Alice Mizrachi come in and do a mural for wall therapy, but then come work with us for Rock Paint Division, and Vince Valentine, and as you said, Swoon has been a huge influence from when I was just a wee artist. I've been thinking a lot about the work of Tatiana Fazlalizadeh recently, just thinking about her impact. That's just some to name a few, I guess.
Shawn, anyone you want to also name drop?
Oh, name drop. I don't know.
No, just people who were like influenced, like people to help. I know, example that I think folks might not expect is just comic books. I mean, that was, I remember speaking with like a time we were bonding just about that, how influential comic books were on us when we were younger.
Yes, that was a platform to create, to draw, to imagine, to be colorful, to be bright. You know what I mean? And folks that kind of and it's the next generation that inspires me. It's that they're gonna do things. They're gonna do things. You know what I mean? And just to have that avenue or that connection point for them to do stuff is just great. And somebody that I'm really admiring now is Easter Gates, ceramicist, but actually is doing community building. So that's inspiring me to what point can I take a splash of paint and turn that into community development, an economic driver, an employment source. Many things can be the tipping point to change an environment. And so that's where I'm at now. As I get older and it's hard for me to stretch and get on these walls, I want to see how do I do this differently? And that's what I'm doing now with Hinge and various other things. How does art infuse community shape our world?
That's awesome. I know, I think Michael's going to pop on here. I threw up just on the share screen how you can find out more information about Shawn and Sarah. Both have a really great presence online, both from their own, what they've put out there themselves and what others have put on them about themselves. Like I said, there's documentaries that are wonderful to learn more about that if you're excited. If you've been excited or inspired by our conversation today. But I'm going to turn over to Mike at this point.
Thank you, Eric. I just want to say this is, in the nearly 4 years that I've been running the Institute for the Humanities, this is probably the most enjoyable and dynamic dialogue that I've been able to host here as part of our programming. I think it's a testament to not only how well you all get along and how well you know one another, but also your commitment to, your artistry and creative placemaking, and above all that, community engagement. So I want to thank you, Eric Lehman, Sarah Rutherford, and Shawn Dunwoody for your willingness to participate in this event. I know you're all very busy, so I really appreciate that kind of partnership. I want to also thank Roberta Schwartz and Linton Smith from SUNY Geneseo, Bringing Theory to Practice grant, and Monroe Community College, of course, for all of their contributions to this event. We're going to post the recording of this program soon, so everybody who has registered will receive notification of that. And I will say, thanks again to everyone for attending and for your questions. And until next time, have a great night.
And I would probably like to add real quick.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'd like to add.
Thank you, everyone.
Sure I'll speak for Shawn and Sarah. If you have questions beyond this, find us. We are here to share and educate. Get a hold of us. We'll have a conversation.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.